How hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Welcome, Johnson County. Good evening. Welcome to the premiere episode of the Texas Transparency Project. We've rebranded from The Breakdown, and I'm your host, Greg Cooper. While our name has changed, our mission has stayed the same. We will still be deep diving local politics, mainly school boards and city councils, but any and all of Johnson County politics are on the table. We air most Thursdays at 5 p.m. The rebranding from The Breakdown to the Texas Transparency Project has been in the works for some time. We felt it a more appropriate name, and we wanted to do two additional things. One, possibly add additional personnel to contribute via consistent hosts and consistent guests, and two, provide additional resources. The resources are farther along and some are ready. So far, we have a dedicated website, Facebook group, and YouTube channel, and we're working on Twitter. The website will be www.texastransparencyproject.org. The Facebook group will be Texas Transparency Project. The YouTube channel, which will air most of the replays of the shows, will be at Texas Transparency Project. And Twitter, to keep things up to speed at various city council meetings, school board meetings, and stuff like that, will be at TX_transparency. So as far as guests go, we're working to have ISD trustees and council members that frequent the show somewhat like quarterly to bring you, the people, an update on the ongoings in your neck of the woods. This idea came to fruition during the recent Central Appraisal District Board of Directors elections. We had Mr. Hunley and his candidates on numerous times, and they were able to get elected to the Central Appraisal District Board. And they've agreed to return, and most likely it will be quarterly, hopefully, to communicate directly with you, the people, to update you on what they're doing to fulfill their campaign promises. But the flagship is this show, and it's the new Texas Transparency Project. And we're exclusively here on JoCo Community Radio. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Tonight on the Texas Transparency Project, we will be discussing an upcoming election, and we have the pleasure of having an incumbent join us to introduce himself to you, the listeners. He's the current Johnson County District Attorney, the Honorable Mr. Dale Hanna, and he's in the middle of an election during the primary season. That will be decided on March 5th here in Johnson County, so just a couple of months away. Before we introduce him, let's talk about what a district attorney is and what they do and the relationship with other county attorneys. The main duty of both the county attorney and the district attorney is to represent the state in criminal cases. Both work with law enforcement, your local agencies, whether it's a city department or a school district department or a sheriff's, and in the investigation and preparation of cases to be heard before the criminal courts. Typically, the county attorney represents the state in misdemeanor criminal cases, or the lesser evil cases, or the lesser serious cases. And the district attorney, that is the office our guest tonight leads, represents the state in felony cases. These public prosecutors determine whether prosecution in any given case should move forward, and if so, pushed to a successful conclusion. As with all elected county officials, the district attorney has ultimate authority over the operations of the office, including the authority to hire and fire personnel and direct their daily activities. The district attorney also has authority to determine how to use all other resources allocated to the office during the budget process and how your tax dollars are spent in regards to the prosecution of these criminal cases to see justice is served. Tonight, here on the inaugural episode of the Texas Transparency Project, we're discussing the Johnson County District Attorney's Office, more commonly referred to as the DA's office. So again, Texas district attorneys are felony prosecutors. So these are, again, the most serious offenses, and they're empowered to gather criminal evidence and present cases to trial if there are grounds for prosecution. So for the first time in a long, long time, residents of Johnson County will have a choice about the district attorney's office. It's gone unchallenged for well over 20 years. This brings us to tonight's guest on the inaugural episode of the Texas Transparency Project. We're joined by the Honorable Mr. Dale Hanna. Mr. Dale Hanna, welcome tonight, and thank you for joining us on the Texas Transparency Project. We're going to start with a little bit about who is Dale Hanna. But first, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Everything's good. Appreciate you having me on, and appreciate having the opportunity to tell the people how the DA's office works as best we can. There are a certain number of cases that I cannot discuss. Pending cases are prohibited for me to talk about, and investigations. But I'm looking forward to tell the people what's going on in the DA's office.
That's awesome, and I'm really glad. And I want to personally thank you for coming here. A lot of incumbents don't like to come on shows, so so props to you for coming on, and really appreciate it.
Sure.
A little bit about just your career. How long have you been the Johnson County District Attorney?
I was elected in 1992.
1992.
So I've been DA for 32 years, and before that, I was elected twice as the county attorney of Johnson County in 84 and 88. And a little history on myself. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Texas. Been there the biggest part of my life. Went to high school there. Live on my dad's farm that he bought in 1940 for his parents so they wouldn't have to move since they were sharecroppers. But my brother and I live there now. Run some cattle there and a small ranching operation. Born and raised there, went to high school there, went to college in Arlington, Texas, and then went to law school at Baylor. After that, I was the city attorney and the assistant city attorney in Arlington, Texas for a period of time. And after that, went to work for Tim Curry, the longtime DA in Tarrant County for 4 years, and then came to Johnson County as an assistant DA at that time and spent 4 years in that capacity before running for county attorney, being elected twice, and then running for district attorney in 1992, and have been in that position since then.
So I didn't know that you were the county attorney at one point. How's the differences between county attorney and district attorney? Same thing, just different cases, or is there a big difference in the dynamics?
As you said, county attorney handles misdemeanor cases. District attorney handles felony cases. Misdemeanor cases generally are less serious. Does not generally involve penitentiary time. Felony cases involved penitentiary time or felony probation time. A little primer on the big picture of the criminal justice system. Felonies, you have 4 kinds of felonies: first, second, third, and fourth degree felonies. And then, of course, capital murder cases, which are a whole nother animal. But the state jail cases, which are the fourth degree felonies, is up to 2 years in state jail. Our local state jail is in Jacksboro, Texas. Third degree felonies are 2 to 10 in the penitentiary. Second degrees are 2 to 20. First degree felonies are 5 to 99 or life. And then you have capital murder cases, which is either life or death. When you start talking about punishments, many of these cases, probation is available. Probation is different from parole. Parole is where somebody goes to the penitentiary and gets out early based on either a mandatory minimum amount they serve or good time credits where their sentence is reduced and they're under the supervision of parole officers out of Austin. And the DAs have no control whatsoever on the parole system. That is handled completely away from us, and we don't have anything to do with it. Probation we handle here locally, and there's a large number of probation officers who keep up with these people. And you say, what's the difference? Misdemeanors, generally, people had a bad day. They just kind of need their head jerked up and get back on the right track. Felonies are much more serious, and the consequences are much more serious, and the crime victims are much more victimized than in the misdemeanors.
Fair enough. So what made you decide to get into lawyers? Can be a very, very lucrative career, celebrity lawyers and all that. But what made you decide to get into public service? And especially since we're talking about Johnson County District Attorney's Office, what made you decide to give so many years to serve the public? Well,
I came early on to the conclusion that I did not want to use my skills to thwart justice, such as a defense attorney would do. I wanted to use what skills I had to see that justice was done. And I have stayed in the prosecution for a long time. I went to work for Mr. Curry in 1975, prosecuting cases in Tarrant County, and have stayed in the prosecution ever since then. And I just didn't feel like it was my job to thwart justice in these courtrooms. I wanted to use my skills to see that justice was done, which is the creed of the Code of Criminal Procedure for all prosecutors, to seek justice, not just a conviction, but to seek justice at all costs. That's our first and primary function.
So as the DA, you said you've done it for over 30 years now. Is that correct?
Well, as a district attorney, yes.
What would you consider some of your major accomplishments and career highlights as you've been serving the citizens in Johnson County over your career?
Well, you don't want to characterize them as highlights or accomplishments. Prosecuting felony cases does not give you any joy to send somebody to the penitentiary. It doesn't give you any joy to send somebody to death row and see them executed. It's not about that, but it is about seeking justice for the victims of some horrible crimes. And that does give you a sense of self-satisfaction to see that justice is done, and to have a jury come back and say, we agree with the state's evidence in this case, and we think this is what the punishment ought to be. So there is a feeling of some satisfaction, although there is not, you don't take joy in imposing punishment on somebody. But from a biblical standpoint, we know that God establishes governments and courts. Romans 13 tells us that. So that's a function of our government, is to prosecute crimes. When you come up to the office in the morning, the first and foremost thing you do is, what decisions can I make that will keep this county safe? And decisions in the DA's chair they come around very quickly. Every 5 or 10 minutes, you've got to make a major decision, and you base that on your experience. It's all about experience. It's all about a proven track record. I've been doing this for a long time. The big scheme of things is we have a good criminal justice system in Johnson County. We have good judges, realizing that judges have one function, prosecuting attorneys have another function. It's interesting for the people to know that each person charged with a felony will have a criminal defense attorney, either hired or appointed. So when we start dealing with a particular case, we're dealing with a defense attorney representing the defendant. But first and foremost, it's all about keeping this place as safe as possible. I feel like over the past 32 years, we've done as good a job as we could do.
So 32 years is a long time.
Sure.
I won't lie. I'm in the district attorney's office is a little bit different, but for people that are writing legislation and stuff like that, I'm a fan of term limits. They don't have them. But there's also some serious advantages to having the right people in the right job for long periods of time. So I can understand both sides of it. But having the unique status of having so much time in the same position, walk us through your decades of service and describe us how the job has changed over the decades. And where I'm driving with this question is, I mean, the internet, things like email, cell phones, bandwidth, generally speaking. How has the district attorney's office and technology, and as society has progressed, how has that dynamic changed how things are done? Because just information now is so much more available. So how have you navigated that type of those changes, positive and negative? I'm sure there's some for both over the decades of your service.
Well, when we first started out in 1992, we had a small staff. I think we had 4 assistant district attorneys. We had 4, maybe 4 staff members. It has certainly changed since then. When I first took office, a couple of years later, we had a capital murder case down in Grandview. 2 girls were murdered. Horrible crime. We sought the death penalty on that case, and he was tried in 1995, and he was given a death sentence. But back to your question, things have certainly changed. The investigators now use a lot of technological tools. The child abuse cases that we get into, many times cell phones provide us a lot of corroboration on these victims, for us to be able to go into court and use that. You talk about technology that's changed over the years. You've seen on DWI cases, you've seen interlocks as a condition of people who are charged with felony DWIs and misdemeanor DWIs.
Real quick, can you describe what interlocks are?
Oh, sure.
So people
Sure.
can understand.
An interlock is a device that's put on a person's car that requires them to blow into it before that car will start to ensure that they are not drinking alcohol. And that can either be as a condition of their bond while their case is pending in court, or it could be as a condition of any probated sentence they might have. All of these technological advances just keep going forward with DNA. That's a big part of our cases now. And people watch a lot of television. They think, well, every case has got DNA. It does not. We've tried some DNA cases, In fact, that capital murder case in 1995 was the first time that DNA had been used in a felony prosecution in Johnson County. But technology continues to advance. I've heard it said that I've received some criticism that I don't have a computer in my office. We've got computers all over our office. We deal with them daily. I've got 3 support staff within about 20 feet of my door. And as district attorney, you find yourself multitasking. You're working on 2 or 3 cases at one time. I can say, Mary, tell me what's going on with this case. Is that person in jail? Is he on bond? Does he have any bond violations? Does he have any cases pending in other counties? Has he been to the penitentiary before? What's his record? And at the same time, I can say, Melissa, tell me what the status of so-and-so is. Tell me what's going on with that case. Where is he? And the same kind of information. The fact that I don't have a computer in my office seems to me to be inconsequential when you've got computers all over that office. We've got 2 full-time investigators that deal with computers, and all of our support staff does, all of our assistant district attorneys do. But we are making advances in keeping up with the crime by using technological advances such as DNA, such as interlock, such as subpoenaing records from Facebook and various accounts. So
you talked about it when you first started, you had 4 prosecutors, and now you're talking about this big support staff. How much has the district attorney's office grown in that time? Do you have the staff needed to effectively prosecute and get through these cases? Is this a how's that? How much has it grown in the last? I know that just the amount of housing developments and schools that are being built and people moving here. How has it been keeping up with that, and how's that gone so far?
Well, when we started, as I said, we had 4 assistant DAs and myself, and then 4 support staff. Now we have a total of 25 people in the office. Managing an office with 25 people in it is no small task. People that supervise employees will tell you human resources, that's a major problem of keeping up with people, keeping them focused on what they need to be doing, having them in the right place. The number of cases that has come into the system used to be maybe 25 to 30 a month. Now it's somewhere around 100 a month. In the past 32 years, grand juries in this county have probably indicted somewhere around 30,000 cases. And a little bit of inner workings of the DA's office, I see every one of those cases. Every one of them, I go to the grand jury, and we hadn't talked about grand juries yet, but we need to do that. I go to the grand jury, review those cases, determine whether those cases warrant prosecution or whether they don't, whether the evidence is sufficient to show that they committed a crime and this is what ought to be done with it. A grand jury, by the way, just backing up just a little bit, if a police department goes out to a crime scene and they determine a crime has been committed, they can obtain an arrest warrant from a local justice of the peace. That person is arrested, put in jail. They may make a bond, they may not make a bond, depending on what it is. The law enforcement agency then brings that case to us for our review. We look at it and make a determination on whether the evidence is sufficient. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But that's what we get paid to do, is to make hard decisions. If it is, we send it to a grand jury. People are saying, well, what is a grand jury? Well, a grand jury is a body of 12 people selected by a district judge at random and put into a room, and they listen to cases presented by law enforcement agencies, investigators from the local police departments, investigators from the sheriff's department, and they make a determination, was a crime committed, and did this person commit that crime, and should it be indicted? And an indictment then issues and is assigned to one of the 3 district courts in Johnson County Courthouse. And I reiterate, we've got 3 district judges. that are doing an excellent job. Judge Hewlett, Judge Strother, Judge Bosworth, and 2 county court at law judges, Judge Neal and Judge McClure. Judge Neal has a long-time district judge and is now on the county court at law bench, but he is handling some felony prosecutions. So when that indictment goes to one of those 3 courts, it is set for an arraignment where the person is brought up. They are informed of what that charge is. An indictment is simply a piece of paper that says you are charged with such and such. They then will enter a plea. If they do not have a lawyer, they'll be given a certain amount of time to obtain an attorney. If they are indigent and cannot afford to hire one, they will be appointed one. And then the next hearing is a pretrial hearing, and then it'll ultimately be set for trial. And on each one of these cases, I make a recommendation on the punishment that this person should have because of that crime. Now, that's assuming that that person comes in and enters a guilty plea, and we make a punishment recommendation. You make that recommendation on a number of factors. You look at the crime that's committed. What was it? How bad was the person victimized? You look at their age. You look at what the crime was. You look at whether or not they have a prior history, whether they've been involved before. And as best you can, you look at what does the future hold for this person? Does this person need to be sentenced to the penitentiary? Does this person need to be put on probation? Does this person need to be on probation but go to drug or alcohol rehab? Does this person need to go to a boot camp for a young offender where they have to adhere to some very strict rules? Each one of these things you have to make a decision on, and that's what the district attorney does. And I either make those recommendations or I approve of those recommendations that are made. And then when you get into the courtroom, the defendant and the defense attorney either accepts that recommendation or they say no, and we will go to trial. And then a trial is had. And that's generally the way the criminal justice system works. As I said, we've probably indicted 30,000 cases in the past 30 years. If it's a trial that is had, that person, if they're sentenced to penitentiary or probation, whatever it is, they have the right to appeal that to the appellate court in Waco. I believe there's been 4 or 5 reversals by the appellate court in Waco out of those 30,000 approximately, which is an astounding record. The prosecutors in my office practice with a high degree of skill. They know what's admissible. They know how not to make a mistake that causes something to come back. And we've been very successful through the years bringing a high quality of prosecution to the criminal justice system, and the juries of Johnson County citizens have supported us by and large. There's no telling how many people have served on juries in the past 32 years. I would estimate approximately 1,500 people have served on grand juries. But those grand juries are the screening body that makes sure no case gets into the felony district courts unless it goes to a grand jury.
So, real quick, we got a couple minutes before break here. So I've been called to jury duty numerous times.
Mhm.
I've unfortunately never been able to serve on one. I have a military background. I have a law enforcement background. I'm never get to choose. So when somebody's called to jury duty, can they get put on a grand jury at that point, or is that a criminal trial?
No.
So explain the difference of how somebody gets to a grand jury, or what a grand jury is compared to what people get when they get that note in the mail, go to jury duty.
One of them is a grand jury. One of them is what we call a petit jury. A petit jury is a trial jury where both parties are there. The defense attorney is there, the prosecutors are there, the case has been indicted, and police officers are going to be called and victims are going to be called as witnesses. That's a petit jury. We'll pick up with a grand jury in just a second.
Great. Thank you, sir. We're here with the Honorable Mr. Dale Hanna talking about the district attorney of Johnson County's race. We'll be back with Texas Transparency Project after the break.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
Welcome back to Texas Transparency Project. We're here with the Honorable Dale Hanna, who's in a primary election, which will be decided on March 5th for the Johnson County District Attorney's Office. Before we get back to our guest here and get back up to speed with how our juries work here, I want to remind everyone that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at www.jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more at the Tiffy.com. I don't know how much stuff the Tiffy.com has for the cold weather that's coming, but it's about to get really, really cold. So once again, we're here on the inaugural episode of the Texas Transparency Project. We just recently transitioned from the breakdown. We have some questions coming in. We're going to get to some of those here in a moment. But we want to come back to these jury thing. We're talking about grand juries and pellet juries. Is that correct? Pettit juries. I apologize. So everyone gets this jury notification in the mail. What determines how a grand jury stood up, and what determines how
a pettit jury is for a trial? I'm sorry, a pettit jury is for a trial. A grand jury is a separate body that is impaneled by a district judge once every 6 months. They go into a room in private and listen to evidence presented to them by the law enforcement agencies, and then make a determination as to whether or not that case should be indicted. The thing about that, 9 of the 12 grand jurors must vote to indict a case. It does not have to be unanimous. In a pettit jury, the verdict has to be unanimous. And Texas is unique in this regard. Texas is only one of 2 states in the United States that juries can assess the punishment. I believe it's Texas and Oklahoma. They're only 2 states where juries have the option of assessing punishment. The rest of the punishment is assessed by the United States by a judge. So Texas is unique in that regard.
Fair enough. So, but if you get a jury notice, you can end up on either one of those two.
You could,
You
depending
could. It
on
just
the
depends on how
the purpose
what's
that
going on at that time.
yeah, that depends on the purpose that the district judge summoned that jury panel for.
Okay.
Once every 6 months, it may well be a grand jury.
Okay. So one of the biggest questions, when I started thinking about interviewing district attorney candidates, and it's probably the most important question regarding this race. Considering the district attorney's office mainly is dealing with individuals accused of crimes and that they're on the legal path towards guilt or innocence, why should the average law-abiding everyday citizen really care about this race? I'm not planning on committing a crime. I've never been convicted of everything. I hope to never be. So why should somebody who really is not close to the victim of a serious crime to where they have a vested interest there, or a criminal to where they have a vested interest, why should the average person voter care about who is the district attorney in their county?
The two most direct ways that the average citizen participates in our system of government is, number one, they vote. Number two, they sit on a jury and listen to a case and have to make a determination on guilt, innocence, and or punishment. When you think about the district attorney's office and the district attorney in general, approximately 99% of these cases are disposed of by an agreement between the district attorney and the defense attorney and the defendant.
These are the infamous plea agreements you hear about?
They call them plea agreements.
Okay.
They're basically punishment recommendations. Those punishment recommendations are made by me or approved by me and submitted to the court if it's agreed to. Now, they don't have to accept it. But again, I repeat myself, we look at a lot of different factors. You look at the age of the defendant. You look at what the crime was. You look at their history. You look at their upbringing as best you can. You look at a lot of factors in making a determination. The bottom line is you try to keep this place as safe as you can. That's the decisions the district attorney makes. You make those decisions based on years of experience. When you talk about handing the reins to somebody to make those decisions, they need to be experienced and they need to make the right decisions based on the right factors.
So a district attorney overseeing a large office of multiple attorneys that are prosecuting, are you more of an overseeing delegator, or do you get into trials? Do you hear trials? What is the role of that actual district attorney?
Well, over the past 10 years, I've gotten into the courtroom less and less because you've got more and more to see after. When we first started this job back in the 90s and the early 2000s and up to 2010, I tried a lot of cases. Now you're supervising 14 assistant DAs in 3 courts, and you rarely have the opportunity to get in and try a case because you're always dealing with something. And it's more and more difficult to find the time to be in a courtroom. But for the first 25 years, I did it a lot and tried everything. And the more our system is clogged with crime, the harder it is to do.
So we've got a few questions here. We're going to ask a couple of questions here. One's from Miss Nova Olson, and it's, Mr. Hanna, what criteria do you use to decide what cases to prosecute and what cases what causes the DA office to decide against prosecuting a case?
Well, you look at the evidence. Purely and simply, you look at the evidence. You use your experience to determine, is a jury going to convict on this evidence? And you make a decision on that. If you look at it and this evidence is either suspect or it's something you can't admit under the rules of evidence, you need to evaluate, is this going to be a successful prosecution? If you prosecute every case that comes through, even though you think it's not going to be successful, you are in effect taking resources away from a major case that you can do something with. As far as having unlimited resources in the district attorney's office, We do not. As far as having unlimited resources in those district courtrooms, we do not. You have to use your experience to determine which cases can be prosecuted successfully, which cases warrant prosecution, and what the results is going to be.
Is the results always the goal to get a prosecution, or I guess it kind of is. I don't know if that's a fair.
Well,
I guess justice is. I mean,
It
things
does,
can
it,
come out that
it does you no good to prosecute a case that you think a jury is not going to convict on, because you're taking resources away from a more serious case. And I repeat myself, resources are not unlimited. You have to prioritize those cases. You have to submit those cases that you can do something with and that warrant prosecution. Prosecuting a case that is not going to result in a conviction is foolish. It's a foolish use of resources because it's not going to be successful, and you're going to put the victims through a horrible experience, and it's not going to be successful. And you make that decision based on your experience.
someone's asking, is a blackmail case a felony case? Or does that depend on the severity? There's a lot of like different like certain things can go class A misdemeanors or low level felony, or wobbler's a term in California.
Well, you really can't answer that because blackmail is such a general term. It can be a lot of different things. There's not a statute in the penal code specifically talking about blackmail. Now, you can use tampering with a witness and that kind of thing. But again, a lot of that depends on the evidence. That may be a federal crime. You can't just say, well, blackmail is this or that. It depends on what the situation there is. There may be tampering with a witness, intimidation with a witness. There may be some of that.
So we'll get back to some more questions here in a minute. And some of it you might have already addressed, but just to close this loop, what are some of the big misconceptions of the DA's office due to your office focusing mainly on unadjudicated investigations? There may be a need to where you can't compromise the integrity of investigations. I think you mentioned that earlier. Some if there's anything pending, you can't comment on that.
Yeah,
and we don't want to do that. We're not asking that. But what misconceptions or rumors or innuendos are festering about the DAs that you might be able to clean up that you think might be out there?
Well,
where do people think the DA may be responsible for that they're not, or vice versa?
Well, the starting point is the law enforcement officers on the street. They investigate the crime. They bring the case to us. We evaluate it. If it's worthy of prosecution, we send it to the grand jury. It goes into the courts and is set for trial and is dealt with one way or another. Misconceptions. Each defendant has an attorney that evaluates the case. Our entire file is given to the defense attorney. They can review the same evidence that we review, and then they make a similar determination, what they think is going to happen. Do they think they're going to be successful? And again, you get back to the bottom line. What's the recommended punishment? If it's a young offender, depending on the case, it may be probation. If it's an older offender, it may be prison time. Again, it gets back to the crime. It gets back to the record. And you find yourself, whether you like it or not, you have to look down the road and see what the future holds for that person. Some of these people need to be on probation. They need to kind of have their head jerked up. Some of them need to go to the penitentiary and be punished. Some of them need to go to the penitentiary for a long time and be punished. You know, the big thing we're fighting in the criminal justice system now and for the past 25 years is drugs. Probably 75% of our docket is drugs, and it's methamphetamine. And drugs are more and more just the scourge of the earth. And it's coming from Dallas-Fort Worth right down here. And we have been successful in taking a hard line on these cases. We have been successful because of the Stop Narcotics Drug Task Force. of setting up an atmosphere of deterrence where drug dealers from Dallas Fort Worth hesitate to come down here because they know they're going to be prosecuted forcefully and aggressively. Now, does that mean we keep all the drugs out of Johnson and Somerville counties? Well, of course not. The more people you have, the more drugs you're going to have. But this Stop Narcotics Task Force has been highly successful in setting up what I'm saying is an atmosphere of deterrence of drug dealers coming down here. And with the proliferation of drugs such as fentanyl and some of the more recent things, those are the things that are causing people, young people, many times to take them and they die. And that's our primary function. And we've taken a very hard line on those things with the help of the Stop Narcotics Task Force.
Um, how do you look at some of the more national approach to drugs? There's a lot of it, and it's not too big in Texas, except for maybe some of the larger municipalities, but a lot of places are really trying to lean towards a much softer approach to drugs, whether it's legalization of marijuana, whether it's selective prosecution, prosecutorial discretion, and a lot of some of the left and right coasts are actually talking about a lot of the more serious drugs decriminalizing them. Is there any leaning towards that in Johnson County? Would you support that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Is the DA's office an office that controls that, or is that something that the DA can control a lot of? Do they have a lot of say in that, or is that something from somewhere? Obviously, if federal law decides tomorrow to decriminalize marijuana, that you can't do necessarily a lot about that. However, considering what you see in some of the other bigger cities, can you, as the DA or whoever the DA is, mitigate that and keep that internal as an elected official to represent the people that vote for the district attorney's office?
Well, it's got nothing to do with whether they vote for me or not. I have taken a hard line on these drugs my entire tenure in office. That is not going to change. We have taken a very strong, aggressive prosecution effort against these drug dealers. That's not going to change. The big picture, the DA, the elected DA, sets the tone for the entire office, and he sets the tone with his punishment recommendations of the way we're going to prosecute these cases. And these drug dealers in Dallas Fort Worth are hesitant to come down here. They know they're going to face a strict punishment, and hopefully that keeps them out of here. But again, the more people you have, the more drugs you're going to have. But the DA sets the tone. Now, our county is known for, far and wide, as a county that has strong, aggressive prosecution. You talk to the man on the street, they will say that. To a man, no one is going to say the district attorneys here are soft on crime. That's not going to happen. We have taken a hard line on these cases through the years. We have prosecuted 3 death penalty cases during my tenure in office. We have one pending right now. Very few, if any, people are going to legitimately say we are soft on crime. We take a hard line on it, and we're known for that.
I just attended an event in Johnson County. It was called the Unveiling the Crisis. It was hosted by an organization called Families Engaged for Effective Education. They do some advocacy across the state, and I was really woken up with some of this child sex trafficking stuff. I had a perception that this was more so, dark alleys, whispering, behind, in the kind of in the recesses of the community. I just didn't, and I really was made aware of how common everywhere in America child sex trafficking is, and from especially caregivers, and whether it's the foster system and all that. How big of a problem is child sex trafficking in Johnson County? What can be done for it? I know the Child Advocacy Center does a lot of the back end piece on dealing with some of these victims, but is this as big of an issue as it seems to be it really seems to be coming to the forefront now in a lot of what the Epstein trial has a lot to do with bringing visibility on this. But how big of an issue is this that citizens of Johnson County need to be concerned about, and what can the DA's office do to help mitigate and protect some of these kids?
Well, first of all, talking about the Child Advocacy Center that was established in 1993 or 4, I think. I was a founding member and still sit on that board, and that organization does a great job of interviewing victims in a child-friendly environment that has been abused in one way or another. And then that allows us to take that case to court and proceed with it. Most of the time, a child of sexual abuse is going to be victimized by somebody they know, a family member, somebody that they've had association with. There are certainly exceptions to that. What we're finding over, and the juries, by and large, have been very supportive of our efforts. If somebody thinks that children are not more educated and more adventurous in their sexual activities than they used to be, they've got their head stuck in the sand, because they are. That's just the society that we live in. You have to make the decision on these child sex cases, what's appropriate. A 17-year-old who is an adult in our system, consensual activity with a 15-year-old he's been dating for some period of time, is much, much different than a 50-year-old with a 16-year-old. You're dealing with apples and oranges, and you've got to have the wisdom to know how to deal with those cases and what justice is. Making a 17-year-old a sex offender in the criminal justice system, where he has to register for life because of some consensual activity with a 15-year-old, that may not be what justice is, versus a 50-year-old abusing a child needs to be sent to the penitentiary for as long as we can. The Advocacy Center does an excellent job. I have 2 investigators that go out there to every interview where a child is victimized. They go out and that child is interviewed in a child-safe environment to see if we can get the facts. Then they go and try to get some corroboration on that offense, whether it's an outcry to a mother, a sibling, whether there's some cell phone text, whether there may be, in some cases, DNA. We take advantage of what we call a SANE exam, a sexual assault exam in Fort Worth, where the child says, okay, this is what happened, and that is admissible in court. There's a lot of pieces that can be put together to show exactly what has happened with that.
So talking about, there's always a lot, in my opinion, a lot more emotion involved with anything dealing with children. That leads us to our next question. Can you describe the differences and challenges working with the accused of crimes, the victims of crimes, and the witnesses for the cases? All 3 have very different positions and perspectives, but for the DA, it's the same issue. Your job is justice and adjudicating these, or prosecuting these cases. And how do you juggle those 3 different viewpoints and personalities and needs regarding the case and how they will be adjudicated? I know if my child, we'll stick with the sex trafficking things just because there's so much emotion with it. If my child was, involved with a 50-year-old man, boy, I would want to take justice into my own hands. I think any responsible father would. How, as a DA, do you deal with the different personalities in all of that?
Well, I'll tell you something that the DA has to do ultimately, and this is where this experience thing comes in. First of all, you don't deal with the defendant at all. He has a defense attorney. You don't communicate with him at all. When you're dealing with the parent and the child, the parent, as you say, comes in and they want a pound of flesh. And I understand that. But sometimes in the same breath, they will say, do what you need to do, but you're not going to call my child as a witness. Well, when they say that, they're kind of taking the bat out of your hand, so to speak, because you've got very few options. That's a very difficult situation for a parent to say, okay, I will allow my child to testify in this trial. And there is confusion sometimes on the issue about whether that child has to testify in court. The truth is, under the rules of evidence from the Supreme Court, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, that child has to testify. And we take pains with getting that child ready to testify. We've been successful in those cases, but each one of those things has got to be looked at. And when that parent says, don't put my child on the witness stand, we have to look for other alternatives. But it's a very difficult situation to deal with. Dealing with that request, demand, whatever you want to call it, versus trying to figure out a way to keep the public safe. It's a very difficult situation to deal with. By and large, our prosecutions of child abuse cases in this county have been excellent, and the juries have seen the evidence the way we do.
Yeah, I was floored at the recent thing I went to. It was heartbreaking. So we got a couple minutes left here with the Honorable Dale Hanna. We're going to run through a couple quick questions just about your future if reelected. What are your long-term goals for the DA's office if reelected? What are your big picture items? You've been there a long time. At some point, you have to consider your legacy. What is your big plan if reelected moving forward, sir?
You know, I've got 4 children, 8 grandchildren. 3 of my children live here. 6 of my grandchildren live here. I've got some skin in the game to keep this place as safe as possible. My vision is to keep this county and this district, both Somerville County and Johnson County, as safe as possible by aggressively prosecuting offenders. The reason this county has the reputation it has as being tough on crime. I'm a humble person and I don't like to take credit for that, but I have been a part of that and I am proud of that. Our goal when we walk into that courthouse every morning is to keep this county safe. That's what I want to continue to do. Whether it's child abuse cases, whether it's drug cases, whether it's violent crime, whether it's capital murder cases, we want to keep this county's reputation as being tough on crime. That's what we're all about. That's what we've been about for the last 32 years. That's what we want to continue to be about.
Fair enough. Well, we're wrapping up here. We got about 15 seconds left. Mr. Hanna, I want to sincerely thank you for coming on here. A lot of incumbents don't do it. Really appreciate it. I want to wish you luck in the election. March 5th, primary, district attorney, Honorable Dale Hanna versus Tim Good. Get out and vote. No matter who you vote for, you got to get out and vote. Thank you very much, Texas Transparency Project. We're signing off. Have a good week, Johnson County.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County.